Hey, yo, I want to talk about Universes Beyond, what its inclusion does to Magic the Gathering overall, and I want to speculate on what could be next. WotC recently announced 2025's lineup of products, and as you can see, the final set coming out at the end of the year is TBAUUB, a to-be-announced unknown Universes Beyond. If you watched last week's video of mine, where as you can see from the thumbnail, I had a rightful moan, I guessed that unknown Universes Beyond is going to be a Skyrim crossover. But I, like many other in-franchise players, can at times be a bit blinded by what Magic used to be, so that we're not able to see what Magic should be now. Because if you ask me, I don't think there should be any Universes Beyond. So let's not ask me. Hey Scarlet, can you fetch that telecommunications dogbot please? And while you're doing that, I'll put my headset on. Ooh, I always forget how fast that thing is. Right, dogbot, can you please call someone with an outside and fresh perspective, the Sequelizer's own, Matthew Stogden? Budda budda budda, budda budda budda, click.
Hello.
Film critic, movie director, podcast host, Matthew Stogden, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks Red. What do you want?
Very concise. Well, I've called you for a couple of reasons.
Sure.
Firstly, last time we spoke, it was at length about Magic's Assassin's Creed crossover, if you remember.
I do. I can confirm if you'd like to know. I have not bought any of it, and I still don't plan to.
Fair enough. That might factor into actually the question I'm going to ask today.
Okay.
For those that didn't watch, Matt really knows his stuff on Assassin's Creed, and I believe I'm right in saying that you have a passing interest in Magic the Gathering. You've played it before,
yes,
but it's because you're interested, but it's never got its hooks into you. You've never gotten into it properly. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
Wonderful. That's perfect, because that puts you into the place of someone who's interested enough to actually talk to me about the game whilst remaining as an outsider looking in, so I can kind of take your perspective as basically a perpetual newcomer. That's very nice.
Sure.
Another reason you're a good candidate for this conversation. I understand you're in the process of currently releasing... Is it season 4?
Yes. Of Super Heavy Kill Time.
Yeah, of your award-winning live-action anime web series.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
It's been running for several years. We took a bit of a hiatus at the start of the pandemic. We were still filming in the background the whole time, but yeah, it's like it's got a big... It's all shot and ready to go, and it's being released. There's 50 episodes of the main season, 10 episodes of the first spin-off, 8 episodes of the second spin-off, and it's back after a bit of a hiatus. Are
you still in the editing process, or have you got it all done? You're just kind of uploading it, week by week.
Yeah, if you like the sort of semi-boring production side of things, everything is shot. Everything is captured on film and camera, and we've got it all locked in the bank. Yeah. The Series 4, Series 5, Series 6 is completely edited and ready to go, and we've been releasing it at the minute weekly in Series 4 episodes, because the way that film festivals work,
right? Yeah,
to win those awards, get those eyeballs and things, you have certain release schedules. You can't just dump it all in one go. It's very frustrating. So season 5 will come out in a few months' time, but yes, season 4 is going through now, and it literally picks up exactly where it left off. In series 300.
I'm immediately going off script actually, because I did want to ask. It's a globe-trotting series. Well, you know what, for people that haven't seen it, it's a story about a group of assassins who are brought together to do like a big job, and it clearly wears its anime influences on its sleeve. Very visually impressive as well. There's a lot of effects work, and it's stylized, beautiful looking. But it's a globe-trotting adventure, and there are shots that look like they are filmed on location. Is that camera trickery, or did you actually go around the world?
That's 100% true. So basically, we shot this series. We've been making movies at Cheese Mint for 15 years now.
Crikey.
And we've done things with, big hired cameras like Canon C1s and Arri Alexa things. We've done things on DSLRs. And with this entire series, the challenge was, which again is a sort of thing that's fun for festivals, we shot this all on phones.
Oh, okay.
And that meant that there's a lot of challenges, things you can and can't do, and there's restrictions, and that's very, very difficult for a director. But it also means you can just take your camera wherever.
Yeah.
So we have shots on multiple continents in multiple countries. You see Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, all over Europe, America. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. It's very silly, very cartoony. If you don't like anime or aren't familiar with anime, it kind of doesn't matter. If you get the extra additional bit of fun if you do, but it is just a bit Tom and Jerry, cartoon violence. And
well, one of the reasons I wanted to, I thought you would be appropriate to speak to for the question that I'm going to ask.
Go for it.
Is that the world that the show is set in? I think I think it's called a kitchen universe, or kitchen sink universe. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because it's it's not just assassins, but you've got robots and ghosts and mad scientists and demons and shonen style key charging martial artists and all that. So is that accurate? Is it a kitchen sink universe?
100%. It is, because we were trying to say this isn't like one type of anime, like, oh, do you like Naruto? We're making a Naruto show.
Right.
Do you like any anime or any type of genre? It's like, well, I like this one. It's in here. It's all in here.
Well, Magic the Gathering seems to be leaning that way too. And while it has its own original IP and characters and world and lore, which I don't want to talk about too much here for fear of influencing you through the rest of the conversation, Magic also, as you know from our Assassin's Creed discussion, has been branching out into other IPs.
Yes.
So what I thought I would do is briefly list them all for you, show you some example cards, and then once all that's said and done, judge your vibe, not on the cards or the sets individually, but judge the overall idea of bringing all of these IPs into one game.
Okay, yeah. Absolutely. Sort of a marketing synergy. How did it go? What do we think as a retroactive? But it's also still...
Yeah, and is it good for the game? Is it bad for the game? Whatever. Basically, I'm going to show you them all, and then whatever your thoughts are, I'm interested to hear.
Got it.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. First up, Universes Beyond is the name of the tie-in crossovers, but as a concept, it's a bit nebulous. It doesn't strictly relate to all non-Magic IP cards. So, for instance, Magic has had crossovers before, like these My Little Pony cards, but they're not official Universes Beyond, I think, for 3 reasons. First, they came out before the concept of Universes Beyond was formally a thing. Also, their borders, normally Magic has black bordered cards. These are silver, which is kind of an indication that they're a bit for fun. They're not to be taken too seriously.
Almost like a collector's piece, not necessarily to be used or played properly, just more for the thrill of it.
Or as like a comedy thing, like, hey, this is a set that's it's not serious, it's not competitive, it's just it's going to do some weird and wacky things.
Sure.
And Hasbro, the company, owns both Magic and My Little Pony.
Oh, okay.
So while it is a crossover, it's kind of an in-house crossover. So I don't think that's why these are considered true Universes Beyond.
That makes sense.
Very similar to Baldur's Gate 3 cards, which are black bordered, so are proper cards to be played seriously, I guess, but they're from Dungeons and Dragons as an IP, which is also owned by Hasbro. Now, interestingly, these cards and the pony cards are what are considered to be mechanically unique, as in they're new cards designed for this set. They're not reskins of pre-existing cards.
Okay.
Unlike these Godzilla cards. Also not Universes Beyond, even though, as far as I'm aware, Hasbro don't own the rights to Godzilla in any way.
No.
And while these also came out just before the concept of Universes Beyond was kind of finalized, it was close enough that I'm not sure that's the reason that they aren't official Universes Beyond cards. It might be to do with the fact that these are all reskins of existing cards. You can tell because if you look at the name, like Godzilla King of the Monsters, underneath is the name of the...
It's equivalent.
Yeah, the Magic IP equivalent, basically.
Sure.
Why aren't these Universes Beyond? I'm not entirely sure, but what I can say is that the rest that I'm about to show you are.
So these are outliers and examples, but not the
these
same
are
thing at all.
non-Magic IP cards that for some reason don't count.
Got it.
So, starting with The Walking Dead.
Okay.
This was available through something called Secret Lair, which is going to come up a lot, which is a limited time, limited availability, direct-to-consumer product that you buy through Magic's own website. So you don't get it in the shops, you get it specifically from them. Usually in the form of just a handful of cards. So not a full set, not a full deck. It'll be like, at most, usually 10 cards. Next, Stranger Things. Also a Secret Lair, so just a handful of cards.
Yep.
Then... Arcane, another Secret Lair, and with this one, it's not all original cards like we saw with the last two. If you look at the two on the sides there, they've got the name like you saw with the Godzilla cards, which are existing cards but have been renamed. The one in the middle, Duress, is just a Magic card already, so all they've done is they've just given it new art.
Yeah, I can see that.
And for some reason, that means that all of these count as Universes Beyond. Why these ones do and the Godzilla ones don't, I don't know. Next.
Interesting.
Street Fighter, another mechanically unique secret lair, and this release marked a change because up until this point, after the initial release of these Universes Beyond cards, they didn't make in-universe versions. So these cards would come out first, and then they'd go and make Magic equivalents. So these are the exact same card, just with new names and new art to match Magic's IP. And this was the last time that we saw them do that.
Okay.
Meaning any mechanically unique Universes Beyond cards that we see after this if you want to play those cards, you have to play that version of them. Are you still with me? Does this all make sense?
It does so far, yes. And I am formulating opinions. That's good.
Cool. Next up.
Oh, yeah.
Fortnite.
You can hear my tone every time. It's like, yeah.
I am. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. As you can see, reskins again by the name. This was a secret lair. I don't have a lot to say about this. Next.
Ooh.
So this is Warhammer 40k, and these weren't a secret lair, but instead 4 full decks of cards that were released, all playable, all of them either with brand new cards designed specifically for those decks, or, like with Blasphemous Act on the left there, existing cards but given new art to fit the theme.
Sure.
Then, Transformers. And if I remember, these were just available in regular packs with a chance of finding them. They weren't like a special release you had to buy from the website or anything like that.
Oh.
That might be because Transformers is another of Hasbro's own IPs, so not really a crossover. But for some reason, these do count as Universes Beyond those. So
yeah, it feels a bit like the pony cards, and yet at the same time...
And I kind of glossed over them because I knew it was coming up here. There have been other Transformer cards that I don't think do count as Universes Beyond. So I don't know, man. I don't know what the rules are. Next. Do you recognise this?
Is this Blood Bowl by any chance?
It is Blood Bowl. Yeah, I'm not sure I would have caught that, but it's, again, a Warhammer or Games Workshop franchise, but it isn't 40k, it's a different thing, so I've included it separately. Then...
Oh, okay.
A movie tie-in for the Dungeons & Dragons movie, which is an IP that I guess they own, but this is a Universes Beyond. The last time we had a Dungeons & Dragons set, it wasn't Universes Beyond. It was, which was Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
So I'm unclear as to the rules, but anyway, if you ever wanted Hugh Grant on a card, there we have it. Next.
Oh, okay.
This was a full set released directly into a format called Modern, and it came with decks and boosters and everything. So this was kind of the biggest Universes Beyond that we'd seen released up to that point.
Yeah, a very quick question and clarify here at this point.
Go for it.
This is, I can see that, LTR in the bottom left there on the card, but this is explicitly Lord of the Rings, not a Tolkien-esque universe, multiple branching thing. Is that right?
Okay, so to answer that question, basically it's just Lord of the Rings, but it's different versions of Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So they did this, which, is just kind of, I think, screenshots from the movie that they did.
Yeah, I know the one.
But all of it is Lord of the Rings. Like, you see Bilbo at one point, but he's old.
Yeah.
And there's different artworks and treatments and stuff. But as far as I'm aware, I think it is just strictly Lord of the Rings.
That makes sense. The only reason I bring it up is because Amazon paid a small fortune for certain things and certain rights.
Oh, yes,
to
of
make
course.
their Rings of Power show. And obviously Lord of the Rings continue. It's why Lord of the Rings in the film version of Peter Jackson, early 2000 movies, it's like, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Gimli, son of Gloin, and Legolas, son, I can't mention your dad for legal reasons, of the woodland. And you're like, there we go.
But when it comes to which version of Lord of the Rings is this, it's not Peter Jackson's movie version, because if we look at these cards, it makes it a little bit more obvious that, like, for instance, that's Aragorn in the middle there. And he doesn't look anything like Viggo Mortensen, I think is his name. So they're clearly doing their own thing. In fact, even if we go back to those first cards that I showed you, that's not Ian McKellen as Gandalf, and that's Sauron, but his helmet doesn't look anything like the movies. What I'm saying is, it's just their interpretation of the books, or what's...
Yes, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. Next up, Creepshow.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what that is? Because I don't.
Here's the problem. It looks like so many things that have gone through, like, before Marvel became Marvel, and there were different type of comics, timely comics, whatever the hell it happened to be.
Yeah.
And all these different ancient comic things that were amalgamated and rolled up into what is now the behemoths of Marvel and DC, etc., etc. Or it could just be in the vein of, there's a run of these things that look like they're old vintage stuff like this?
Well, they're specifically listed as Universes Beyond, so I think this must be a thing. I guess not that we're familiar with.
No.
Anyway, next.
Oh, okay. It took me a second to realise what was going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not picked the best. It's just because I wanted.
That's not on you. That's on the cards, I think.
Well, like if I've picked a selection because I was like, okay, everyone knows what a weeping angel is. I'm going to have a weeping angel in there. That's Rose Tyler, iconic. And then I was like, an image that's got all of the Doctors, but it takes you a second, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Doctor Who. This was very similar to the. Now, stick with me.
Okay.
This was similar to the 40k Warhammer tie-in in that it was 4 full decks. But they also released boosters, but none of the cards in the boosters were ones that weren't already in the decks. So if you'd have bought the decks, you didn't really need to buy the boosters, except in the boosters they had different arts, so they were kind of for collectors.
Yeah.
Like, it was very popular, very well received, and I do appreciate the idea that if you don't want to have to buy boosters, just buy these decks and you get all of the cards. I like that, but it's also not really something they've done since. But yeah. Anyway, next. Evil Dead.
Yep.
Now, reskins of existing cards, as you can see by the name.
Yes.
I'm upset at this because why? If you look at the text in the middle of the card, Linda is a legendary creature. Ash isn't.
That's a choice.
What's that?
I mean,
about?
it's not even like they're saying Ash at different times. I mean, like, oh well, Ash pulling up in his car in the first part of the first or second movie.
He's not legendary yet.
No. But then he's waving a chainsaw around. This feels like he's becoming legendary. I feel like that's a bit odd.
I think they picked this card because it's to do with picking up an equipment, which you could then have the chainsaw be the equipment, I guess. But also just an odd choice. Just make a new card, I think. Anyway.
Yeah.
Next up,
Oh.
It's the Princess Bride. Wild to me that we got this as a secret lair. Anyway, next.
Oh my god. I don't know. I haven't been informed. I'm genuinely in the dark as much as you are, viewers. Every time a new franchise pops up, I am both shocked and amazed and surprised, but also completely like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense.
I mean, yeah, but also, do we really need Ian Malcolm as a card?
Yeah, doing his butterfly experiment with the water.
Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, because have you seen this?
I mean, okay, again, very surprised and also like, of course that card had to exist.
Yeah, like what else are you going to do, honestly? Yeah. Wild. Anyway, next up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Secret lairs, much like the Street Fighter ones and the Walking Dead and Stranger Things, but the fact that they've stopped making Magic IP versions of these cards, for some reason this is the one that rubs me up the wrong way the most. I don't know why. I don't even particularly want the cards. I think it's just because it just feels like so easily could be done universes within. I don't know. This one puts my nose out of joint. And here's me saying a lot. I wasn't going to try to sway your opinion in any way. Ignore that I've said that. Anyway, next.
Again, took me a couple of seconds. Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's Commander Mustard on the right there. And just a lead pipe as a card. Fascinating that they've done that. If you look at the art as well, it's all like intricately, so like it's not designed for plumbing. I don't know.
It's very ornate. It's very steampunk.
Yeah. Well, next.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you know what, actually, hang on. Before we get to that one, let's go back to Cluedo for a second, because interestingly, this wasn't a secret lair. If I remember right, some of the cards were included in standard packs, but if you wanted the majority of them, if I remember, you had to buy a special version of Cluedo that was not Cluedo but Magic themed, and it was not Magic the Gathering but Cluedo themed. It was instead an amalgamation of both games, and I would be fascinated to play that, but also just weird and wild, and I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, Fallout.
Yes.
This, again, following the Warhammer and the Doctor Who approach, was 4 full decks that you could just buy and have all the cards for.
Okay.
Next up.
Oh, just Hatsune Miku?
Just Hatsune Miku, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ridiculously popular.
Oh, I'm a big old weeb. I'm more than familiar.
I do have one of the albums. I'm an eclectic, like, I like that song. I'll buy an album, see what else there is.
Makes sense.
It was World Will Be Mine, I think is the name of the song. It's just a banger. Everything else on there is fine. I wouldn't consider myself to be a Hatsune Miku fan, but if I hear a song that I like, I will buy an album.
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah, I did that recently with Baby Metal. I heard a couple of songs and then
I like Baby Metal stuff.
Bought like 3 albums. Oh, and also the Gorillaz back catalogue I bought recently because I was like, oh, I like 4 Gorillaz songs. I'll buy every single one of their albums.
I have the same neurospicy brain where I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. I'm going to buy all of this.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do it mostly because I'll buy albums because I don't like to do it through streaming because I think buying an album, I believe, gets the artist a little bit more money.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yeah.
I'm all about that. I'd rather buy an album and then not enjoy sort of 90% of the songs. Mm-hmm. But at least that way I know that they've got more money. Speaking of, hey, check out my Patreon. Anyway.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, here's one you're going to be familiar with.
Yeah.
We had an entire, very long conversation about this, so second time I'll plug it. Go check it out. It was meant to be a 10-minute conversation, and much like I suspect is going to happen today, ended up being 35 minutes, so there we have it.
That's why my answers are short and concise today.
Right, next.
Oh, God, okay, this might be the first one that actually genuinely surprised me a little bit.
Yeah? In a good way?
Neither good nor bad. It's and I thought I'd save my thoughts more for the end, but
yeah, sure.
It's the base of who are we talking to? Who's the audience? Who are you trying to appeal to? And as an older millennial, I'm like, oh, me.
Yeah.
You're trying to talk to me.
This was another ridiculously popular one. There was backlash at the time, or outcry, I should say, because and a lot of accusations of, and I don't know how accurate this is, of like all of the product being sold out immediately and going to bots and scalpers. So
that's pretty shit.
Yeah. Around the time they changed how they distribute them, because it used to be limited time and print to order, but then they were like, no, that's not generating enough FOMO, so we'll say no, and now it's limited stock as well, first come first serve. So, and this was kind of, at least to my mind, I suppose it happened with Hatsune Miku as well, but this was kind of to my mind the first time that I was made aware of the issue as being as bad as it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, next.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I do really like Slimes, how they didn't want to pay for Bill Murray's face, and so
yeah, I know, yeah. I was about to say the exact same thing. It's like, how do we get around this bluntly?
Yeah. This was another secret lair that was just like a handful of cards. And next up.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I've never seen Chucky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not big into slasher movies and that sort of thing. Like, I like a psychological thriller like The Ring, but yeah, anything that's just about getting people stabbed, it's not my jam.
Fair enough.
Next up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, now, do you know what this is?
I feel like I do, and that's what's really frustrating me. It feels like a JRPG, but I can't place it.
So, this is Friends of Hatsune Miku, I think, other Vocaloids, I think.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Who are cosplaying as Magic the Gathering characters.
Oh,
so
okay.
The elements that you maybe recognize in are from advertising and stuff or for Magic the Gathering, potentially.
Right.
Of all of them, these are the ones that I think, because I don't know who any of these characters are, but I appreciate that they're dressing up like Magic characters. And I kind of feel like that's how crossovers should be done.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, hey, here's Slimer on a card, but it's like, here's the characters from that other universe being a part of our universe, and I'm less offended by that. Here's me again giving you my opinions. I told you I wasn't going to do that. Right, let's move on.
Why am I surprised to see this one?
Well,
I feel this one's be too big, is why I feel like.
Well, so what you're looking at currently is a secret lair, which is tell a lie. What you're looking at currently is like 6 secret lairs.
Oh.
There was one for just Storm, one for just Wolverine, one for Cap, one for Iron Man, one for Black Panther, and maybe others if some I've forgotten. And these were all less than 10 cards, direct purchase, that in total were like $200 or something mental. But it is the first wave of several Marvel sets that are to come.
Right.
So you're right, it is going to be big and they're going to drag it out.
Okay, that makes sense.
Next.
Hello.
So we are now at the point where, in the timeline, where they've announced things but haven't released them. So next year, we're going to be getting Final Fantasy cards. They have revealed some artwork.
Ooh.
Yes. And it's seemingly going to be one set, a full release, so legal in all formats, presumably with decks and the like, that is going to feature, it appears, to be an amalgamation of every Final Fantasy.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay, next.
Speaking of Marvel.
Yep. So the first of the Marvel sets is again going to be a full set, full release. So like 350 cards ish, specifically designed around Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know he has a rogues gallery, but I don't know. I think the only way they can really do this is if there's like 20 Spider-Men cards in the pack.
Tell that to Sony, who are trying to punch out any villain film they can, like Madam Web and Craven without a Spider-Man in it.
I hear the last Venom movie has not done very well at all.
I did not like it.
Okay. And you can read that review
You can.
on your website?
That's absolutely correct. theredrighthand.co.uk. Go read it now.
Link in the description. Next.
Yeah.
Oh, the sigh of every Magic the Gathering fan who's no, a lot of people were very excited about this, I think.
I can imagine the fan base is very passionate and loyal. I think weirdly enough, I was expecting one of two things to come up in the next thing, either Adventure Time or SpongeBob. It felt like that was on the horizon somewhere, and there he is.
Yeah. So that's the last that we know for definite that is coming.
Oh, okay.
So as someone who is not as invested in Magic the Gathering, seeing all of this, what are your thoughts?
Okay. So here are my initial thoughts. That is a very wide shotgun blast spread, like full-on blunderbuss, elephant gun, boof. We're going to hit as many franchises as possible.
Yeah.
And to me, there is a... and this may be my jaded mindset as someone who's been in and around filmmaking in these industries, in the entertainment industry for a long, long time. It just feels very cynical. A real cash grab of like, what can we get you on? We'll get you on something. And the word that's sort of belting me over the head isn't, corporate, absolutely, is Funko.
Oh.
Because in the sense that it was like, here's a thing we have that is cookie cutter and straightforward. And we're going to hoover up as many franchises as possible for disenfranchised people who think, I want more of this, but I don't have that. And we'll slap it on our thing. And in doing so, it might cheapen the core thing itself.
Right.
So trying to appeal to as many people as possible.
Right.
But in doing so, weakening the point. And it's very interesting you said thing about the expanded Hatsune Miku fan base world building thing, because that was the only one, as you said, which feels like it's actually blended.
Yes.
As in it's blended into the universe as opposed to simply just, these are the cards, here's Assassin's Creed, get out.
I don't know any of those characters, and it's the only one that I don't find offensive.
Yeah.
It's the only one that I'm like, oh, okay, here is an actual crossover. It's not just thing that you know on a Magic card.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, that's where the Clue or Cluedo one sort of comes in as well, because you think to yourself, it's not a direct version, and there could be partly... I mean, it's Hasbro, they probably own the rights to that anyway, but it's more the idea of they're doing something different with it rather than just we've taken effectively a screenshot, done some artwork for it, and it's Jeff Goldblum with a glass of water in his hand.
Yeah.
Talking about water rolling back on Laura Dern's hand. And you're like, okay, but is that actually adding anything, or are we just like, listen, you suckers, we'll take your money for anything?
That's why I went back and re-showed you the Cluedo cards, because I think context is important in that one, in that, yes, they are Magic cards, but they're for a separate product, because just, Senator Plum, Commander Mustard on and just a lead pipe, a rope, a gun, whatever, on their own, I think rubs me up the wrong way. But the fact that it's not necessarily for Magic, it's doing its own thing, I'm like, okay, sure. I think there is something not very Magic about having a card that's just called rope, but also it's not necessarily I guess.
I'd also add to that, if I may, that it's one of those very precarious things to repurpose something that is also a game.
Yeah.
I don't mean in the sort of Lara Croft Tomb Raider sense, because that, to a degree, is like, well, there's a lot of lore and world building. Same thing with Warhammer. There's a lot of lore and world building you can do around the things. But Cluedo, the story is there's a body, and you have to figure out who's done it and with what in what room, etc. That's a very different mechanic to Magic the Gathering, and I feel like it's like saying, oh, we're going to do a Battleship version. It's like, I don't think there's enough story and unique concept there to actually mine, other than people are familiar with Colonel. Again, if you had one card on its own, it might not have the impact of when you see them together and go, oh, I see what this is.
So, I mean, that's what I suspect is going to happen with these SpongeBob cards, because it's a secret lair. I think it's just going to be 10 cards. It's just going to be, hey, look, it's SpongeBob on a Magic card. End of thought.
Sure.
these Universes Beyond cards, they seem to do a good job of bringing in new players. You've already said that like the effect that it has on the game is it turns it into Funko. How do you think it's going to make the game be perceived by people who aren't as enfranchised?
Well, I think this is the question I could ask to you. You say about it brings in more players. Does that mean it sells, or there are actually people who go, right, I'm going to play this particular version, I'm going to use these specific cards, and then play the main set, play with the actual core Magic the Gathering cards? Because I think that's where sales can be misleading somehow.
Yeah, so I have had several comments on videos where I've discussed this in the past of people who have said, hey, for instance, in fact, even our Assassin's Creed video, where people have said, I got into this game because of these cards and I thought the game was cool, so I checked out other stuff. But I get the feeling that what they're checking out is the game, not necessarily the world.
Right.
I don't know how many people who are going to see, I don't know, Final Fantasy cards and then go, oh, this is cool, I'm now interested in learning about Liliana Vess. Like, I don't know how much of a crossover there is in that sense. But also, I'm saying that almost as if it's on the customer. There does seem to be less focus on the narrative and the lore from WotC themselves lately. Next year, I think, Mark Rosewater, head designer for the game, had said that a set is coming out that's going to be the culmination of the current story arc, akin to big narrative events we've had in the past, like something called the Phyrexian Invasion or the Eldrazi. But quite frankly, looking at the sets, I couldn't possibly that have been in universe, I couldn't possibly tell you what the story is, because we've had a western, we've had detectives, we're doing a racing set. We did a haunted house, and I guess that kind of does tie into a larger narrative. But yeah, I just don't know where it's going, and I don't know.
For me, that's where the interesting point is, because through trying to speak to people, i.e. via the franchises they love, what you're actually quietly introducing is segregation in a weird way, because it's like, this is the Final Fantasy set, this is the Ghostbusters set, this is Walking Dead, etc., etc. If you don't like Lord of the Rings, don't worry, we've got Doctor Who, you're going to like one of these damn things, because nerds be nerding. But at the same time, I think, and again, just to circle back for that Hatsune Miku one, I think they've genuinely missed a trick here. I think if you were to incorporate it cleverly with a wink and a nod into the world better, that would be much more rewarding and get you in the franchise in a more satisfying way, because you would take interest in things in the same way that you can see in certain video game tie-os of where it happens to be in other franchises, a crossover that's a wink and a nod but still grounded in that particular universe. It makes sense in that moment. Right. There's a comic book mindset, which is, if you see Batman in a Batman comic, everything in that world is very Batman, it's very grim, it's very, appropriate for that thing. But if Batman turns up in a different, like a Plastic Man sort of story, he's treated differently because it's from that main character's new viewed perspective. Weirdly enough, there was a Final Fantasy XIV Assassin's Creed Origins crossover. We talked about this last time with the Chocobo, absolutely cursed Chocobo. But that's the point. They still had this sort of like, we can do this, but we're still going to kind of ground it a little bit so it makes a bit more sense rather than being completely tonal whiplash. I mean, so talking about the Vocaloid ones, Len and Rin here, I don't know who that is, but they're dressed up as Will and Rowan, and it's like you say, they've made more of an attempt to be. If you're a big fan of Kaito, I think that is, and you can see that he's dressed up as this Jace character, maybe it's going to be like, oh, well, who's this Jace character? If there's a connection there, I'm going to now read about him and learn about him and figure out, who Jace is. Oh, which is a question. I shouldn't have. I should have picked a different character. But well, if I may, I think that there's as I mentioned that segregation just now, I think there is the cognitive leap that people will not be willing to take. Or if we talk about this in very corporate shill marketing terms, because let's face it, Wizards of the Coast will be doing that. You're trying to get as many people as possible to get into the game in some way, in some respect. It's not about selling them one pack of cards. It's about getting them into the idea of it through something they're familiar with, and therefore they will become emboldened and an advocate for the franchise. Go, I really enjoy this. Let me see what else there is, etc. However, you have a real blocker if it's like, I love Jurassic Park, I've bought this, and it's like, okay, would you like to try this alternative thing with Ghostbusters, or maybe the mainline series? It's very fantasy heavy, right? Yeah. And you just go, no, because you gave me the most soft approach introduction. It's not like you're trying to say, I enjoyed this particular food and I've done a different version of it for you. Oh, it's kind of similar. It's just like, here is your usual sandwich you eat every single day of the week. And here is something that's so dramatically different, you cannot fathom it being food. It's like, well, I'm just not going to bother.
When they've done, to use your example, the Jurassic Park cards, they weren't a nod and a wink to Magic the Gathering. They were just, here is Jurassic Park on a card.
Yes.
And if that's all you care about, then you're done. I get that. So would you say that the way forward could be for the health of retaining these new players to make them more like these Hatsune Miku cards? If it turns out that these aren't Hatsune Miku characters and I've just been getting it wrong, people are going to crucify me in the comments. But I think these are Vocaloids. If more Secret Lairs were like this, where they were referencing Magic's own IP, that would help bolster. That's a good idea. That's not one that I had considered before, but. No, I think I agree, if that's your point.
Yeah, it is, ultimately, because I think the thing is, if you talk to somebody who is a big fan of a franchise, and I do mean, because the ones they picked here are very, both, as I said before, revealing and interesting and kind of eye-rollingly typical. So you think it's Walking Dead, Stranger Things, Street Fighter, Transformers, you're like, yep. If you had to say, what are nerdy people into, and there's a handful of things that don't appear, and I think, well, they'll appear at some point, because unless it's a licensing problem, they'll get them eventually. But the thing is, people who are passionate about these franchises don't always want the exact same thing spoon-fed again and again and again. They like variation, but subtle variation. It has to feel unique enough that you want to buy it, that you want to have this thing for your collection in some way, shape, or form, but also familiar enough that it's like, oh, I know what that is. So, for example, with the Assassin's Creed stuff, it was just like, yeah, I already know these things.
Yeah,
I already have this in the game.
So, I mean, if there was going to be an Assassin's Creed game that had Scooby-Doo, Goku, and Rick Sanchez as playable characters, you're saying that you would be more on board with it as long as they all dressed as assassins and I don't know, Scooby-Doo got some sort of power-up from eating a Scooby snack or was like quicker at running away. He could run into a door and appear out of another door because that's what Scooby-Doo does, and Goku can power up and Rick Sanchez has a portal gun or whatever. As long as it's a blending of the two IPs, it's less offensive.
I think it's more pick your base and stick to it and build out from there. Otherwise, you look, and this is to come back to the Funko thing, you look desperate.
Yeah.
And you look like you're trying too hard just to court everyone under the sun because you're flailing and grabbing for anything that will stop you from falling.
It looks less like a design of passion and for artistic sake and more just because people in a boardroom said, hey, this will make money.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And that's how you sort of breadcrumb people into stuff. It's very cynical, it's very corporate, but that's what these companies are and what they are doing. They're just doing it quite bluntly, which I find frustrating.
So you said earlier on about how the types of people that they are targeting, fan bases that are fanatical about a certain property, and it seems like they're going through a checklist of being like, hey, what other things do people that play Magic the Gathering might also like this thing, so let's do a Universes Beyond of that. That kind of leads into my final question, but before we get there, I wanted to say thank you very much for joining me and having this conversation with me.
Of course.
Where can people check you out?
2 or 3 main places. I'm on a podcast called Sequelizers, where we talk about bad movies, what went wrong, and fix them. I also run a company called Cheese Mint. That's a YouTube channel you can check out now, and we have lots of different things we make in terms of short films and feature films as well, but also, as Red has already mentioned, a web series called Super Happy Kill Time, which has a lot of what considered very eclectic mix of anime references, but it all comes together because the central universe makes sense.
If someone's going to jump on board, should they watch from the beginning of the season, the beginning of the series, the latest episode? Where's a good onboarding point for that?
Perfect question. So,
well, thank you very much.
The example I get, you're very welcome. The question, I was asked this fairly recently, and in the same way of like, where do I start watching One Piece? It's like, well, not at episode 135. You start with episode 1. As much as that might feel daunting, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel. All of season 1 is in one video called Season 1, oddly enough, special edition. It's about half an hour long because the episodes are quite short. And then you go season 2, season 3, and then you can jump straight into the episodes and carry on from there. It all picks up. It all makes sense. It all feeds in.
Fair enough.
And because we wrote this in one go, all 50 episodes effectively, episode 1, there are things that are referenced there that are shot at the same time as episode 50.
Okay,
so
well,
all makes sense.
I will link episode 1 then in the description below. So you can, if you're interested, you can click that and start the journey.
Yep.
Final question, a question to go out on. when they announced Final Fantasy and Spider-Man, they also, if you can see, at the end of the year, announced that we're going to be getting a to-be-announced Unknown Universes Beyond.
Oh, that's what that means. Okay.
Based on everything that you've seen here, which presumably new non-magic IP do you predict that it will be?
Ooh. I feel like I can narrow it down to 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
I'll give you all of them because I can. I think, given the franchises we've seen here, Back to the Future will make an appearance for some reason.
Oh no. Yeah, you're right. Oh no. Go on.
I feel like Star Trek and/or Star Wars will make an appearance.
Yeah, it feels inevitable.
Yeah. My other outlier, just because Monty Python's on there, Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Okay,
that's the problem. I could say anything. I think, Phil, you'd say, yeah, I can see that. Blade Runner, yeah, I can see that.
Okay, well, what's your pick? Make a pick. What's the one that you think it's going to be?
Let's go with Back to the Future, because that's such a much like Walking Dead. I'm like, oh, that feels a bit late. I feel like you've missed the boat on that one. And with the way of the 20-year cycle of nostalgia works, we're out of the Back to the Future nostalgia now. We're into the 90s and early 2000s nostalgia. So it feels like that classic's like, oh, that's a choice.
No, I agree. Well, you've heard it here first. Matt thinks it's going to be Back to the Future. I'm still putting my money on it being Skyrim. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like James Diamond, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me on my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. And while you're down there, check out Matt's links as well, go look at his stuff. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time. And that's the end of the video. Hooray.
Hooray! And it's an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I can edit that down.
Good luck.
He says.
I fully expected to get a message from you saying, Matt's 45 fucking minutes long. I can't edit it. We only fucked up like twice.